This is Danny Flexen here for Seconds Out. Delighted to be joined once again by my good friend and Daily Mail sports writer, Jeff Powell. Jeff, how are you doing?
Yes, very well, thank you.
Glad to hear it. We're here to herald the rematch between Joe Joyce and Zhilei Zhang. We all saw what happened in April. Did not go Joe's way. Fairly conclusive ending with the eye being pounded shut by the southpaw left hand of the Chinese heavyweight. Now they're going back in, immediate rematch. Do you think it's a wise decision?
I think it's probably the only decision he could make, because what it does do, it actually gives us two heavyweights who are going to fight, two of the better known heavyweights in the world, sort of high ranking, which is more than can be said for the two reigning champions and the two former champions who are trying to decide whether they're going to fight any time this year, each against each other, and whether it will be on Saudi Arabia or on Mars. So at least these two are getting into a fight and give us a heavyweight fight to look at and talk about. So for that, credit to him. He took a chance, Joe, in the first fight against a big guy who can hit, and he took a risk and he lost. And it's now an even bigger risk for him to take this fight again. I don't know what options he would have had, because the rest of the division is stagnating at the moment. It's held up by whether Saudi Arabia are going to do the big Fury Usyk fight and so on. So he's as well to get back his interim WBO title, which would put him in a position to become, one would hope, a mandatory challenger for that, no matter what happens among all the others. So he's taken a great gamble. He could be lights out for his career, or he could find himself actually moving into the big money, which these other fish are hedging over and not fighting, and he would deserve that.
You mentioned the Saudi, much ballyhooed Saudi. We can't call it a tournament, apparently. We've been told it's just two big fights on the same night. How much blame do you apportion to the Saudis and the money that's coming in from them for this current malaise in the heavyweight division? And how much is down to the fighters themselves?
It's a difficult one, because if you were earning your living in this very dangerous and deadly game, and someone would say, well, we can increase your income level over the next little while. Yes, I think they're entitled to think about that and take it. But the Saudis apparently have put no contracts on the table, and months are going on by without seeing the top four heavyweights in the world fight each other. So there's some blame to them. If they're serious, if they mean to do it, then get on with it. Offer them enough that if they refuse, they look not very good for refusing, and get the fights on. But as I understand it, it's now quite uncertain that there'll be two fights on the same night. At least one of them, probably Fury and Usyk, will be moved on into the first quarter of next year. But I always thought it was madness for them to even consider doing that. The intention, apart from the sports washing, which we hear so much about, the intention is to attract people to go to Saudi Arabia. They're trying to open up as a tourist destination. With the money, the oil will last forever. They've got to find other ways to earn money, as Dubai has done as time goes on. They want to be a top destination for tourists. Well, to put two big fights on one night seems to me crazy. If you did it on successive nights, you'd get people going to Saudi, say, well, if we're going for one fight, we'll stay for the next one, and they'd have them there for a fortnight instead of 2 days. So somebody's logic and thinking is out of kilter unless they're not serious.
And it would be financially beneficial to do that as well, not just for keeping the tourists there, but for making two big fight nights instead of one. The tourism industry as well, a lot more money in the pot then.
And if they would do that, at the moment, as Joe Joyce himself said here today, what's happening between all these, the big four, is bad for boxing, that they're not fighting. He's prepared to get up and fight, and I bless him for that. But I just think that if they got their act together, we wouldn't have to worry quite so much about criticising Saudi Arabia's human rights records and all that stuff, because they would actually be at last shining a light on heavyweight boxing and making it come to life. And something dramatic has got to happen for that now. And if they sort themselves out, I don't care where the fights are, as long as they happen. But we can't go on any longer with any kind of dignity and respect for heavyweight boxing unless this is unlocked and quickly. Credit to Joe and to Zhang for taking this fight. Zhang could have sat back and said, I'm the WBO interim, and said, I'll see what happens for me and where the chips fall. But credit to them for fighting. Credit too for Dubois being willing to take on Usyk. I know it's not a fight he would have refused, but it's a very, very difficult fight in that sort of more localized version of the heavyweight scene at the moment. So at least we've got two British fighters who are putting something on the line, and we should be proud of that. And we should ask the superstars to look at them and do the same.
With that in mind, it appears the Joshua Dillian White rematch talks are now back on. The rematch clause, I'm saying rematch far too much, have been removed from the contract, so they're talking again. Tyson Fury, we're just hearing speculation more than anything else. How important is it that he fights in the interim as Usyk is fighting Dubois before he takes on Fury early next year?
I think there's a decent possibility that Tyson will fight at the end of September. There's no certainty about who the opponent might be. It would be a difficult, if it has to come from outside the elite group, it's difficult to find an opponent that would generate that much excitement. But, you know, they'll come up with something. Joshua White, it's I find it astonishing that there's public interest in the recycling of, you know, the same old fights again. I'd have liked us to have moved on, had a new champion, had new young sort of potential stars coming up. To keep recycling like we've had Chisora's recycled, now Dillian's being recycled. I mean, good luck to them, they've given their service to the game. But is Fury against White really the kind of fight that should be in a stadium and being sold at huge pay-per-view price? I'm not so sure. They've got to be very careful not to go to the well too often and suddenly come up dry.
I agree. Just another subject I wanted to get your views on. Conor Benn, we saw an article recently, I hate to mention another newspaper while you're on the camera, but in the Times, talking about new evidence his team have apparently uncovered regarding how his body works and how it processes clomiphene, which was, of course, the substance that he got found positive for. Not sure if that evidence has been presented in totality to UKAD yet. What do you make of that? And also the possibility of Ben fighting while still under a UKAD investigation?
Well, first of all, in my view, he should not be fighting while he's suspended by the British Boxing Board of Control. They took forever to even consider giving any kind of report about eggs and contamination, and didn't take it. Any kind of evidence to the Board of Control. So now they're changing the story again. Well, next time it will be had an ingrown toenail, which caused an infection through his body. I think he would have been much better, and he's been not well advised. It would have been much better for him to do what Amir Khan did. Amir Khan was shocked, genuinely shocked. I saw his face that morning, that suddenly he'd been found to fail a drugs test. He went out and said he wanted to do something about it to try and see if he could clear himself. But he did it by spending £100,000 to try and establish how it got into his system. He didn't know how it got in. He said, look, it's a drugs test, it's correct, they're nearly always correct, second samples always prove it. There's no point me denying that it was in my system. So I'll try and find a way, you know, what happened and see if there can be some kind of exoneration for what went on. He said, until I know that, I can't fight this, but I accept the finding. I think that would have been much better for Conor, because at some point, if he'd done that, he'd almost be through a 2-year ban by now. Honesty begets everything you want in life. Deception doesn't.
Jeff, really appreciate it, and yeah, let's catch up again soon.